Good evening again. I'd like to call. What is my deal today? It's all whatever. Committee of the Whole for the Village of Cary for November 21st, 2023 to order with roll call, please.
Collier,
Here.
Walrap,
Here.
McAlpine,
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Now to the public comments, where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. We discussed these at the beginning. Is there anybody else that would like to address the Committee of the Whole? We'll go ahead and close public comments at 6:16. One item on our discussion items tonight is regarding home rule. You taking this, Courtney?
I am. So what I've gone ahead and done tonight is put together an example of what frequently asked questions would be. So based on the conversation last meeting, we talked a lot about, what are the advantages and disadvantages to home rule and what would those look like. So some of this information will be familiar, but just it's kind of in a format for this is what you could provide to residents to explain. So just, again, home rule is for those communities above the 25,000 or if they go to referendum. And the home rule is different from non-home rule. And one of the big ways, I should say, is that non-home rule communities are subject to all state legislation and mandate, including unfunded ones, compared to home rule is a little more flexible and only when preempted. So, again, a reminder that municipalities with populations over 25,000 are automatically granted that status, and those that are under 25,000 are able to go to referendum. So what are the limitations that home rule municipalities have? This specifically, and the biggest point is that they do not have unlimited power. They can still be preempted by the state in order to do certain things. And then, of course, the state also, has certain licensing powers. Pensions is a good example. Open Meetings Act, Public Labor Relations Act. These are all things that home rule municipalities still have to follow. And then any action a home rule community takes, it's also subject to restrictions by federal and state constitutions. This is just a map to show you specifically the communities in McHenry County whose home rule by population versus referendum, and then who's non-home rule, and then we are in blue. There are 8 communities that are home rule. Most of them are populations over the threshold, and then Prairie Grove and Barrington Hills are home rule by referendum. And then overall in the state, 221 communities are home rule. So potential advantages of home rule. This is where a lot of this may be familiar. Financial flexibility and stability. So it allows the village to shift the tax burden from residents to non-residents through those optional taxes that we don't have access to currently. So examples, the home rule sales tax, a gasoline tax, and other local taxes that you could put into place. And then you have the opportunity that you could use these funds solely on certain projects if you so choose, like infrastructure and roadway improvements. I've put in as an example, if we were to contemplate a 1% home rule sales tax, this is like what we would provide to residents, right? So that's why that's in here. And then home rule communities have the ability to incur debt beyond 20 years, and they have fewer restrictions on those multi-year contracts. Expanded local control. So again, this is more focused on those mandates, right? When the home rule communities are only subject to mandates when they've been preempted by a supermajority vote of the state legislature. So there are cases where home rule communities do not have to do things in the way that non-home rule communities do. So that's what this is focusing in on, is providing more control at the local level and having the local officials decide on things that impact the community rather than taking directly from what the state says. community safety. This is where home rule communities can enact certain regulations, such as adopting a crime-free rental housing ordinance. Home rule communities also have the ability to adopt different personnel procedures for police, such as appointments and promotion. Expanded zoning authority is another one here. This is, again, home rule communities just having more freedom to modify and streamline their processes. They also can enact a vacant home ordinance, which holds lenders accountable for foreclosed properties. So one of the big questions last time is, okay, so what's the disadvantage of a home rule? So typically what happens is home rule municipalities do have broad taxing and regulation authority, which means they have the ability to increase property taxes beyond that PTEL limit, which is the 5% that we're held to as a non-home rule. And so this could create the idea that, a community could raise their taxes to whatever they want. However, what we've seen is many communities actually pass a resolution of these restrictions that say, the Village Board of Trustees is going to follow those property tax caps and or conduct public hearings if any new taxes are approved or if any existing taxes are increased. These are avenues that the Village of Cary, could take as a home rule, or in trying to pass a referendum for home rule. Again, this is just something if we so chose, right? The village could use additional revenues towards certain projects, whether it's capital projects, roadway improvements, or you are still able to keep it more broad for operating expenses. But I think the village board has talked quite a bit about, it's all about improving the quality of life in the Village of Cary, focusing on those road resurfacing, sidewalks, bike paths, public community spaces. And again, this is that a home rule sales tax, for example, could be dedicated to those projects. It's an option, to be clear, though. And again, this is just an example of what we would show in an FAQ. So where does tax money currently go? The village is 4.86% currently. You all may have remember seeing this when we talked about the tax levy. And these are two of the key questions to provide to residents, right? Is if you vote for a home rule, is the change permanent? No, the community could seek a referendum to return to non-home rule if they so chose. And then also, in any situation, it's up to residents how they would like to vote. The village can only provide information about what home rule is and how it can be used. Ultimately, voters can evaluate those facts. So that's just kind of an overview of frequently asked questions. We looked at a wide number of communities. Most recently, Barrington is a very good example who just went through this process. So are there any other questions related to home rule and how that process works?
No, that was very comprehensive. We have to remember too, just to reiterate, if we had a population of over 25,000 people, we would automatically be able to be home rule. As some communities have happened with the recent census, like for instance ours, we went from 18,271 to 17 something. Say we were at 25,200 and we went down to 24,900, we would lose our home rule authority. So by doing a referendum, it gives us a little bit more stance. Because obviously we were not at that 25,000 mark, which through my other roles, we are currently trying to work with our state legislators to make this more of a state statute that would allow municipalities of our size to become home rule without going through the process of a referendum, because it's an arbitrary thing. Wouldn't you agree, Attorney Euler? It's an arbitrary figure, this 25,000. I mean, we just had a great audit review. We are financially sound. We make very conservative decisions for the village. And any time that we try something to create new impacts and quality of life, it's nice to have that backing of the community. So I think our goal now is to do a successful campaign to inform people on what home rule is and what it's not. Take away some of the dark clouds that some people may have over it. One of the key things that Courtney mentioned is that we could put together a resolution that limits our abilities to do certain things. And I think that that's very important. Like, for instance, the real estate transfer tax. We have no desire to enter into that. That's not what this is about. You know, we're, again, trying to improve the quality of life here in the village without relying so much on property taxes.
Draft resolution was included in the agenda as well.
I have one question. When you talked about the unfunded mandates that the state keeps passing down, if we became home rule, does that go back to what they've already enacted and you don't follow that, or is it just new stuff going forward?
Well, there are a lot of those, so I guess
Right.
you would have the ability to revisit them
Okay.
in the event that we have codified some of those in the municipal code, or we've already enacted a scheme here in the village by ordinance or resolution to follow the mandates. You would be able to unravel those particular mandates. Some of those apply to both non-home rule and home rule.
Right.
So I think it would depend on what it was and when it was enacted. But yes, you can undo any of those. It wouldn't be automatic if we've already acted to implement them.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I like the whole idea. I think it's really about that educational component to make people really understand what it is, and to also be in a position that we say, hey, if we had a sales tax, it's not just for residents, it's for anyone that comes to our community, that we're capturing that. But I think it would be prudent upon us, if we're going to do this, to definitely have some limitations like Courtney had included in the packet, where it says here's some of the limitations that we're going to do. I just don't want, and I talked to the mayor about this, I don't want to box us into something that says this automatically is going to go for roads if all of a sudden at some point we need it to go for some other infrastructure project or something. I want to keep us nimble enough that we have flexibility. That's why there's elections. That's why people have an opportunity to say, are the people that have entrusted to be good stewards of our taxpayers doing the job? And if they're not, then they shouldn't be there.
And the one that was provided in the agenda is just an example. I had Attorney Euler also put one together that didn't make it in the agenda, but where it, and I wrote it down to read it, where you could say the village commits to first conduct and complete a public hearing process to receive public input on any such taxes. So you could also go that route rather than, saying the money is going to be for the certain things. You could at least follow the public hearing process to provide residents that opportunity.
I like that. I just think that we want to have as much transparency as possible and get input from our residents as often as possible.
Well, I think we learned a lot through the pandemic over the last several years. That big word that came out, everybody needed to learn how to pivot. Now, this will give us an opportunity to make pivots according to what's going on. Could be economy-driven, could be, whatever. But it gives us, so we could be a little bit more nimble.
I think that the most important repeating factor that we've heard from everybody so far is flexibility. And the current funding system in the state of Illinois for almost all municipal products, as we all know, is your property tax. There are variations of other items, but when you look at everything that you see from your municipalities, let's use McHenry County and the dollar bill example we had up there earlier, it all comes, the vast majority of it comes from your property tax. And having this lever to pull will enable us to find resources that we desperately need. Police pension fund is only funded at 55%. We're on a program to catch that up. There's an option. We currently have a successful road program that's maintaining, but we need more funds or it's going to have less than acceptable roads in the very near future. There are other municipalities in McHenry County right now that are taking gigantic, drastic steps because their roads are completely unsatisfactory. Having this lever pulled would give us the opportunity to be more flexible in the way that we bring in revenues and not just rely on property taxes.
Agreed. Any other comments? Courtney, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great job.
And just for clarification, I'm hearing that the consensus from the committee is to proceed with the process to prepare an ordinance to send the home rule topic to a referendum.
Yes. Yes.
correct?
And I'm hearing that there is support for having certain conditions by resolution as kind of outlined by Assistant Administrator Sage. And then the third topic we wanted some direction from the committee on was the timing. Is it the desire that this be placed on the next possible election, which is the general primary election in March 2024, or election after that?
I certainly think it's a discussion point, and I think in fairness to the community, we would have to take a very hard look at having it outside of 4/4/23. That's pretty short order, and this is a fairly large change, and I would be, you'd have to convince me that we have enough for opportunity to, through the holidays and shortly thereafter, stir up enough public dialogue to get everybody's input and hear everybody's point of view to make that decision. I'm not saying it's impossible, but we also don't want to be in a position where we're forcing something out to the public without the proper information with it. So I certainly would be open to that discussion, but I would be leaning towards sometime after the 4/4/23.
I agree.
And Administrator Morimoto, I think Courtney pointed out at our last meeting that although the election is in March, the board's action would need to be taken at least 68 days before the election. So you're really looking at a January deadline.
Which
to take the actions.
I
that
don't want
need to
people
take.
feeling like we're hoodwinking them and trying to cram something down their throat.
We need the information out there to the public and feedback
But the
first.
sooner the better, in my opinion, is to get the information out there, get the
Yeah.
educational component going, and do the next one if that's what it amounts to. It just doesn't seem like
Okay.
we have the proper time to be able to do what we need to do and disseminate the information to everyone.
So that would be the November 2024 election, just so the general election would be the next.
There's nothing before then. Okay.
I was looking more towards the March 2024. I think that's more, this is more of a local issue.
Yeah.
This would be something that, if you look at the statistics of the voters that show up, I think this will get lost with the congressional and presidential election that's coming up in 2024. And I would rather concentrate on the local elections where we drive the people to the ballots for specific things that affect, our local government. I think we could do a better job with that.
Is there anything like a special election where we couldn't be up against any of this and just do it separately? No? Okay.
Do we have a timetable of, I know we kind of chatted about this a while back, because we thought about doing it this next upcoming one. What is the thought with being able to get information, whether it's posted on our website via other mechanisms? How quickly can we get our staff, whatever we need, the time to be able to do? Are we able to do that? I guess, Eric, is what I'd be asking to you.
We need to see a timeline of.
Yeah, just
Attorney
give me a
Euler
timeline.
mentioned there's a lot of steps we need to follow. Well, what are those steps? What is the timeline? Where does that put us in having to get this information disseminated?
I can actually pull that up.
Because we did chat about this a while, I think maybe when you were not here.
And some of the outreach staff has already put some time and effort. It's more compiling it and packaging it. And then obviously the recommendation from staff, like most everything that this board reviews and considers, having the opportunity for public meetings. So we would obviously incorporate both our outreach digitally with the website, FAQs, combined with our public meetings and open houses and so forth. And I believe.
I think there would
Courtney
be ample time to coordinate everything and put out the information that we need.
So just putting it on the referendum is, obviously you just place it there is what it amounts to. You're just doing a placeholder at that point. And you could continue to do your outreach and everything during this
Yes.
entire time.
Correct.
Now, factoring that in, and to Trustee Wallace's point, there are obviously some other things going on in the midst of that, but obviously, depending on the priorities, and that's what this committee is designed to do, to help us prioritize staff's time. Obviously, we do have a budget process, so we do have budget workshops in mid-February and mid-March, but through that, looking at the calendar, there are windows of opportunities for points to insert public meetings, and then obviously prior to that from now until probably the next month or so when the ordinance would be passed, the staff would have time to prepare all the other outreach materials.
Well, and to the mayor's point, seeing it this way and the way Attorney Euler lined it out is the very first step is we have to pass an ordinance.
Correct.
You have to pass an ordinance, and I don't think that, there's 3 members not here. I think everybody's in favor of putting it to the voters and letting them decide if they think it's a worthwhile endeavor. So the reality is, we're probably at the point of passing a referendum, or excuse me, an ordinance anyway, to get it to that point. I think the logical step, in my mind, would be having a timetable to Director Morimoto's comment, of public meetings, of multiple public input meetings, and different communication mechanisms. We have a solid website, we have a solid communication. It's still a tiny fraction of the people that live in this town that utilize those comparatively. So we need a more comprehensive way to get the information that we put together so people can make that decision on a referendum on their own. So I certainly wouldn't be against the 4/4/23 as far, 24, the early date, in passing an ordinance for us here very shortly. But we would want to make sure that we put our best foot forward, because I don't think we want to do this again 10 months later.
No, I agree. And I was going to mention it before we wrapped up, that the trustee Weinhammer, trustee Dudek, and trustee Stefani both support this. Again, we're not taking any action. This is just getting a consensus of what we want to do. So I would prefer that we have staff take a look at a realistic timeline of what we could do to get messaging out there and what helps we would need and how this would kind of affect our budget process. So as Kelly's over there smiling, there's a lot that goes into the budget process. So we want to be realistic. We want to make sure that we are completely, totally transparent in pushing the right information out. So let's have, if you don't mind, Courtney, put together kind of a timeline of what you think would be a respectable timeline that we could hit as many opportunities as possible. Not with said all of our public meetings that are coming up with, because we have I think 7 or 8 before that, actually more, I think. But there's ample opportunities to where we can ramp up things, and we would need the support of the board to help us outside of village board meetings to perhaps head up some meetings local. We could do things here, go to the library, wherever, and hold informational sessions on this. Does that sound like a plan?
Absolutely.
Agreed,
Yes.
Anybody else have any comments regarding this? Okay. None said. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 6:38.